My beloved child, I know you are standing in a strange in-between. The promise has been set in motion, yet the world outside remains quiet as if nothing has happened. Right there, I remind you of this. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Hebrews 1:1, not a ticket to exchange for instant results. If you only believe when you see change, then you are following outcomes. But if you remain when nothing is visible yet, you are entering a true relationship with me. There is a truth I need you to understand clearly, so your heart will not be unsettled. You are not forgotten, and you are not late. The in-between is not an empty space. It is a meeting point where I am working in the deep places before I allow you to see with your eyes. When you assume everything is mere coincidence, your prayer can easily become a hurried habit. But when you accept that you are exactly where you should be, you will stop striving in impatience and begin to listen fully, not only to what excites you, but also to what I use to shape you. I do not lead you through the in-between merely to rescue you from the difficulty in front of you. What I aim for is far deeper, restoring you at the root, your weary body, your tangled finances, your fractured emotions, and your disordered spiritual life. Blessing is not indulgent pampering. It must be stewarded with discipline and right choices. If you only want to receive more without allowing me to set things right, what you call grace can soon become a new burden you do not understand how you ended up carrying. In the in-between, tears often come before answers. I do not take your pain lightly, but I also do not want you to use it as a reason to stop. When you do not let bitterness take root, pain can become a quiet seed that begins to sprout. What you call loss today may be what I am reshaping into a harvest tomorrow, if you are willing to turn complaining into clear prayer, and turn long nights into a new discipline for living, working, learning, and healing. I look at you now not with a suspicious gaze, but with the patience of a father who knows exactly where you stand. You think you have gone wrong because the scenery around you has not changed, because the promise you heard is still not within your grasp. But I whisper to you precisely when everything still looks the same. I am confirming that you have not wandered from the plan. You have stepped into the appointed meeting I prepared long ago. In that place, I do not need you to run faster. I only need you to stay long enough. Many have walked away from this meeting point because they assumed silence meant absence. But with me, silence is often when I am working most deeply. You grow weary in this space because you have become used to measuring me by outward signs. When you do not see a door open, you begin to doubt what I said. When you do not see results, you think you misheard my voice. That is when faith is quietly distorted, not through open betrayal, but through an unspoken bargain. I will believe if you prove it. I do not condemn you for this, because your heart longs for certainty. But I want you to understand, if you treat everything as random, your prayers will become shallow, not because of me, but because you are only seeking a temporary sense of safety, and that very haste makes you miss how near I truly am. Remember the two disciples on the road to Emmaus. Leaving Jerusalem in the sorrow of late afternoon, they had heard the promise. They had witnessed the cross, but they did not understand the resurrection, so they believed everything was over. I walked with them for a long time, yet their eyes were kept from recognizing me, because they searched for me only in what was familiar. I did not scold them for leaving. I simply drew near, explained everything piece by piece, until their hearts burned again. Only when they were willing to stop, break bread, and remain long enough did they realize I had never left. You are the same. The in-between is not a full stop, but a stretch of road where I am walking beside you, even if you have not yet named my presence rightly. So I invite you to return with a different posture. Do not live as though everything is accidental, and do not pray as if you are merely trying your luck. Quiet the distractions that keep you hunting for noise to fill the emptiness. Stay with me not only in the passages that thrill you, but also in the parts that require patience and obedience. When you remain long enough, you will realize I speak to you not only with words, but through a life whose rhythm is being rearranged. And when you stop asking, when, your heart will begin to ask, what do you want me to learn here from where you are standing? I do not only want you to understand you are in the right place, I also want you ready for what I will do next. This meeting point is not a place for you to pitch your tent forever, but a place where you are prepared for a deeper restoration. When you recognize you have not been abandoned, you will have enough peace to look honestly at what I want to touch at the root. And from that peace, you will be ready for me to lead you farther, not merely out of difficulty, but into a complete renewal you have never imagined. I want you to receive this with a slower breath, because here is where many misunderstand my heart most. When you are exhausted, I do not come only to pull you out of the pit and then leave you to live the same way as before. I do not patch things up, and I do not merely mend the surface to soothe you. What I seek is restoration at the root, where old habits, old patterns of thinking, and disordered choices have quietly drained you. If I only get you out, you will soon return to the same cycle. But when I restore you, I want you truly free, not just temporarily relieved. Many times you ask me to change your circumstances while I wait patiently for you to allow me to change how you live within them. You ask me for more strength, yet you do not want to learn true rest. You ask me to open financial doors, yet you avoid stewardship and restraint. You ask me to heal your emotions, yet you still cling to attachments that keep your heart in turmoil. I do not say this to accuse you, but so you understand restoration is not indulgence, it is the reordering of what is out of place. When order is rebuilt, peace will no longer be a fragile feeling, but a solid foundation. Remember Naaman, a powerful commander who carried leprosy within him. He came expecting something grand, a quick miracle, a dramatic gesture, a word worthy of his rank. Yet I told him only to wash 7 times in the Jordan, an act so simple it offended him. That simplicity exposed what he was not ready for: humility as the path to real healing. When he obeyed, not only was his flesh restored, but his heart was renewed. You are the same. Many of my blessings feel stuck, not because I am slow, but because you are not yet willing to walk the path of being corrected. So I call you back to honesty before me. Let me touch the 4 areas I care about. Your body needs to be cared for with the right rhythm. Your finances need to be managed with responsibility. Your emotions need to be guarded in truth. And your spirit needs to be nourished by a discipline of love, not by passing inspiration. If you only want to be given but refuse to be shaped, you will soon grow tired of the very thing you once asked for. But when you allow me to form you, blessing will become support, not a new burden. I know this is not easy, because it requires you to abandon a faith that functions like a bargain. Yet it is here that you begin to grow into mature faith, no longer dependent on the feeling of being indulged. As inner order is gradually restored, you will realize I am preparing you for deeper stretches, where emotions no longer lead, but trust becomes your compass. And when you are steady enough to face what is still unfinished in you, you will understand why I am not in a hurry. Some things can only be formed through patience, and that is what will carry you forward on this journey. I know there are days you wake with heavy eyes, not only from physical tiredness, but because your heart has cried too long in silence. Your tears do not confuse me, and they do not push me away. I have seen every drop fall on the nights you thought no one understood. But I want you to hear this clearly: tears are not wasted, yet they are not permission for you to remain forever in one place. If you turn pain into a shelter, it will slowly hide the road I am opening. Many people hold on to sorrow as proof of their own righteousness, as if the more they suffer, the faster I must answer. But My child, pain does not automatically produce maturity. When you let bitterness take root, pain will lock you in the past. But when you place it before me without decoration, without prolonged self-pity, I will turn it into material for building something new. I do not erase your memories, but I teach you how to carry them without being driven by them. Remember Anna in the temple, the woman who remained through many years of loneliness and waiting. Her loss did not make her closed off, it made her steadfast in prayer. She did not use tears to demand, she used them to listen. And on what seemed like the most ordinary day, she recognized the Messiah in a poor infant. What she waited for did not arrive with trumpets of victory, but with quiet presence. You are the same. What I am preparing for you may be coming in a form very different from what you imagined. So I call you to take one more step. Do not let your lament circle only within your heart. Turn it into specific prayer. Tell me plainly what hurts, what you fear, and what you do not yet understand. Turn long nights into a new discipline. Sleep enough for your body to recover. Work faithfully, even when no one sees. Keep learning so your mind is widened. And seek healing instead of hiding. These small things, repeated in trust, will slowly change the rhythm of your life. When you no longer use tears to justify stopping, you will see pain begin to change its shape. What you call loss will gradually reveal itself as a harvest being sown in darkness. And then you will be clear-minded enough to look back at the doors that closed not with resentment, but with discernment. For when your heart has been softened by tears placed in the right place, you will be ready to understand that not every closing is a defeat, and not every opening is salvation. I see your face each time a door closes, especially the doors you prayed over for so long to be opened. You often think it is a sign of failure, or a cold refusal from heaven, but I want you to learn to see those moments in a different light. Not every closing means loss, and not every silence is turning away. Often it is my hand placed gently against your chest, stopping you from entering what would wear your soul down day by day before you even noticed. What makes you hurt so much is not only the closed door, but that you have attached your identity to what lies behind it. A title, a relationship, a path to quick success. Everything can look bright from the outside. When it collapses, you feel as though you yourself have been rejected. I do not blame you for hoping, but I gently warn you, do not worship what I only allowed you to pass by. Anything you place above the life within you will eventually demand a very costly price. Remember King Saul, anointed and entrusted with power. When he saw people leaving him and the threat of losing his position drawing near, he hurried to preserve appearances rather than obey. The door he feared closing was not merely a throne, but human approval. Yet that haste caused him to lose what mattered more, my presence. Do you see? What he thought would protect him became the very thing that stole his future. Some doors must close early, because if they do not, the damage later will be far greater. So I invite you back to the humility needed for discernment. When a plan collapses, ask me what you are being pulled out of, not only what you are losing. When a door shuts, listen to whether your heart grows lighter or heavier. Many times, quiet peace, arriving alongside regret, is a sign that I am protecting you. Learning to trust that protection will keep you from chasing what glitters but is hollow. When you no longer panic at closed doors, you will begin to live more freely, free, not to trade your soul for speed, not to trade depth for quick recognition. And then you will be ready to enter an even greater paradox of the kingdom, where you stop gripping life to secure yourself, and learn instead to become a river. For only when you release your hold on old roots will you recognize the new path quietly opening ahead. Now, as your heart trembles less at what closes, I invite you into a deeper paradox, one many believe, yet few dare to live. I speak to you as a father who knows your instinct to hold tight. People fear giving because they think they will lack. But in the kingdom, I do not measure by accumulation. I measure by flow. When you keep everything for yourself, even what is good will slowly stop breathing. But when you become a river, life will keep being renewed within you. The reason it is hard for you to become a river is not that you are selfish, but that you have learned to believe in earthly mathematics. You think you must have enough before you share. Be safe before you open your hand. You fear that if you give compassion, you will be drained. If you lift others up, you will be left behind. But I want you to understand, what I give you is not for you to guard like a rarity, but for you to let it pass through you. When goodness is held back too long, it changes shape into anxiety, into control, and finally into loneliness. Remember the boy with 5 loaves and 2 fish. He did not have enough to impress, and he did not have enough to secure himself. Yet he placed his little into my hands without conditions, without demanding guarantees. The miracle did not begin when the bread multiplied, but when the boy let go, and in the end, he did not lose his portion. He witnessed what he could never produce on his own. Do you see? Becoming a river does not make you poorer. It only frees you from the illusion that everything depends on your ability to grip tightly. So here I gently warn you, do not turn sharing into a sacred transaction. Do not give only to activate benefits. Do not love only to be repaid. Do not serve only to prove your worth. When motives are misaligned, even good things will exhaust you. But when you give because you love others, because you obey, because you trust that I am working beyond what you can see, your heart will become free from calculation, and free from the fear of being shortchanged. I do not promise you that signs will always be clear, or that outcomes will arrive on the timeline you prefer, but I tell you the truth. What I want to preserve in the long run is not only what you receive, but the person you are becoming, one who believes while standing in the in-between, who gives even without abundance, and who stays with me when nothing seems to change. When you live this way, you do not merely pass through the in-between, you become a witness that I am still acting, quietly yet faithfully, in every beat of your life. I want you to stay a little longer. Don't rush away with trembling hands the way you have so many times when your emotions rose too high. What I am about to say is not meant to overwhelm you, nor to awaken shallow hope, but to place you back where you truly belong, in the arms of a Father who has been there from the beginning, even when you thought you were all alone. I have walked through every ordinary moment of your life, not as a distant spectator, but as the one who is near enough to hear even the thoughts you never dared to speak out loud, the choices you made that no one witnessed, the times you had to shrink yourself to fit your circumstances, the times you clenched your teeth and stayed silent so others wouldn't worry. I saw it all, and I did not turn my face away for a single second. You think those things are too small to be remembered, but to me, no moment is insignificant when it is bound to faithfulness. When you stood before numbers that didn't match your needs, when you crossed off a very real desire to preserve what was more necessary, I saw that quiet sacrifice clearly. It wasn't loud. It didn't look heroic, but it carried the shape of a faith trying to breathe under pressure. You weren't only choosing between items, you were choosing between giving up and continuing forward with honor. And in those moments that seem so painfully every day, I was shaping you into someone who can steward, not merely someone waiting to be rescued. There are fears you have never named, only felt as a heavy weight pressing on your chest in the latest hours of the night. When the world has fallen asleep and there is no one left to steady you, your mind runs in circles around scenarios that haven't happened, roads that haven't opened, questions without answers. You thought those were the moments I was absent, but in truth, those were the moments I was closest, close enough not to interrupt, only to listen. I do not rush to silence your worries with hollow phrases, because I know you need to be seen before you can be comforted, and it is that quiet presence that has held you in place, keeping you from sliding into despair, even when you didn't recognize it at the time. I have received every tear you let fall in silence, not as a weakness to be ashamed of, but as a prayer that needs no words. There were times you no longer had the strength to believe with your reasoning, only the ability to believe by clinging in the most fragile way. But hear me. My child, faith is not measured by certainty, but by staying. You stayed, even tired. You did not turn your back. Even when you didn't understand, you kept living with kindness, even when you felt hollow inside. And that is a faithfulness I never take lightly. What you thought was only enough to survive is precisely the material I use to build something more lasting. I want you to understand this deeply. Not a single detail of your journey has been overlooked. The sighs you swallowed back, the right decisions no one praised, the times you chose not to hurt others even while you were hurting, every bit of it has been noted, not as a scoreboard, but as the imprint of a person being formed. I am not only concerned with you getting through, I am concerned with who you become after you get through. And that is why I do not answer you with one isolated piece, but with a restoration that reaches into every dimension of your life. Even now, I am reordering what you thought was tangled beyond saving, not by a magic act that makes everything vanish overnight, but by a new order that gives you the strength to carry what I give. Your body will learn the rhythm of rest again, no longer living on prolonged tension as a habit. Your mind will grow quieter, not because there are no problems, but because problems will no longer rule you. Your emotions will be healed from fractures you once accepted as normal, and your spiritual life will no longer revolve around waiting for signs, but will be anchored firmly in relationship. I am not inviting you into this through temporary excitement, but through mature trust. The restoration I give does not make you dependent, it makes you steady. It does not help you escape reality, it gives you the capacity to face it. And when you look back on the road behind you, you will realize that the days you assumed I was the most silent were the days I was doing the most work, not to prove power, but to protect your soul from what you were not yet strong enough to carry. So do not close your heart too soon, and do not rush to conclude the story when the page has not yet been turned. What is happening is not an ending, but a transition. I am leading you out of an old way of believing where faith was turned into bargaining and into a deeper place, where you trust even before you see, give even before you have abundance, and remain even before you understand. This is not the most comfortable part of the journey, but it is the most necessary, and I am here not to pressure you, but to walk with you, step by step, slow, steady, and true. I have not come only to touch one small corner of your life and then leave the rest to keep cracking as before. When I move, I do not work in scattered fragments, because you were not created as a collection of separate parts. You are a living whole, where body, emotions, thoughts, resources, and soul are woven together so deeply that when one part is exhausted, every other part slowly loses strength as well. That is why what I am leading you into is not a single blessing for you to boast about or cling to, but a comprehensive process of transformation, quiet yet persistent, reaching into the very places you have grown used to enduring without expecting renewal. I know your body has carried too many marks from long days without rest. Some pains are not exactly sickness, but the consequence of living beyond your limits for too long. Some weariness cannot even be named, only felt each morning as heaviness, as though your strength has been drained before the day begins. I do not dismiss that. I have seen every night you forced yourself up, every day you pushed forward even when you were empty inside. And in the place where you thought you could do nothing but endure, I am beginning a true renewal. Not loud, not sudden, but little by little your breathing will deepen, your sleep will become whole again, and your body will relearn the rhythm of rest it has forgotten. The healing I give is not only the absence of pain, it is returning you to the original order of life, where you no longer have to pay with your health for every effort to survive. At the same time, I am also working in the numbers that make you anxious. I know the feeling of looking into your wallet and sighing. I know the unease when the end of the month approaches. I know the pressure of having to manage, patch, and stretch from one day into the next. Lack does not only erode your finances, it erodes your dignity, slowly convincing you that you are always at a disadvantage, always chasing, always fearing tomorrow. But I did not create you to live forever in that spiral. When I make a way to provide, I do not only bring money, I teach you how to stand firm before money. The channels that once felt blocked will be opened little by little, and burdens that seem to have no exit will be loosened step by step. You will no longer live only by sheer endurance. You will learn to steward with new wisdom, where money is no longer the master, but a tool that serves the life you are building. But if only your body is restored and your finances are eased while your heart remains empty, I know you still will not be truly living. I see the quiet spaces in you where joy once lived but slipped away without you noticing when. There are smiles you have practiced until they feel familiar, yet they never reach the depths of your heart. There are relationships close at hand, and still you feel alone. Sorrow is not always loud. Often it is simply the long absence of feeling understood and being able to rest. I have not come to blame you for being sad for so long. I have come to pour into you a joy that does not depend on circumstances, a peace that does not require you to pretend you are strong. Little by little, lightness will return. Laughter will no longer be forced, and you will realize you have not been abandoned in this world the way you once believed. And above all, I am touching the deepest part you often avoid your spiritual life, not to pile on more responsibility, not to make you strain to become more righteous, but to allow you to live more truthfully before me. For many years, you may have grown used to believing by habit and praying by rhythm while your heart was tired and distant. I do not condemn that. I only want to rekindle a connection that was once vividly alive, where you come to me, not out of obligation, but because you know you need to remain in my presence. When your spirit is renewed, the other parts of your life will naturally find order again. You will not have to force yourself to believe, because faith will become breath, not burden. None of these things happen so that you think you are more deserving than others, or so that you measure me by what you receive. They happen so that you become someone different, steadier, freer, and able to trust even before everything is finished. I do not promise a journey without trials, but I promise a journey without meaninglessness. Every restoration unfolding within you is weaving a new foundation, where you no longer live by fear, but by deep, quiet trust. And when you look back, you will recognize that the most precious change was not what shifted on the outside, but that you are no longer the old you, the one who thought you could only survive, never truly live in fullness. I know there have been seasons when everything inside you became so tangled that even you could no longer tell where you were going, not because you were weak, but because you had to walk too long through dim crossroads, where many voices spoke at once, and none sounded clear enough to guide you. When your vision was obscured, you began walking by habit rather than conviction, by reflex rather than purpose. Yet even in that haze, I was not standing outside watching. I was quietly doing something deeper than what you expected, washing your sight clean, not with a blinding light that overwhelms you, but with a pure, gentle clarity, steady enough for you to discern what leads to life and what ends in a dead way. There were moments you thought you had lost direction, but in truth you were being separated from paths that no longer fit the new person I am forming you to be. When your goals felt unclear, it was not necessarily because I was not speaking, but because you had grown used to hearing me through the lens of fear, through the pressure to achieve something quickly. I do not correct you by yanking the steering wheel. I adjust you from within, where you begin to understand again why you walk, why you choose, and why not every open door is meant to be entered. The clarity I give does not make you better than others. It makes you more honest with yourself and with me. The transformation I am working in you does not stop at a single aspect, because you were not created to live in fragments, where your body once grew weary through neglect. I am teaching you a new rhythm of rest, not to escape, but to be restored. Where your finances once tightened under a lack of direction, I am reshaping the way you steward them, not only your cash flow, but also your trust. Where your emotions were once drained from carrying too much that was never yours to hold, I am softening your heart again, returning to it a joy that does not depend on circumstances. And where your spiritual life once swayed because you lived by momentary feelings, I am laying a firm foundation again, so you will know who you are and whom you are walking with. This is not a temporary patch so you can endure a little better. What I am doing is whole and comprehensive, because the cracks within you were never isolated. When one part is wounded, the other parts are affected too. The enemy does not need to destroy you with one great blow. He only needs to keep you misaligned long enough for you to begin doubting yourself. But I will not leave you there. The light I pour out does not only expose the problem, it also reveals the way forward. It does not only uncover the confusion, it restores order. When you begin to see clearly, you will be surprised to realize that I have led you away from many dangers before you even had words to name them. And now, I invite you into another step of mature faith, the step of agreement. Faith is not only an emotion you keep in your heart, it is the consent you express through words and actions. When you dare to confess what I am doing, you do not create a miracle with your mouth, but you open your heart so a miracle has room to stand. There is a holy power in naming rightly what I have begun. When you speak restoration, you are choosing to stand with the light instead of continuing to describe the darkness. When you affirm healing, you are aligning your heart with the rhythm of heaven, where all things are finished before they are seen. I know you have hesitated with declarations, because you fear hoping only to be disappointed again. But, my child, I am not calling you to speak in order to persuade yourself. I am calling you to walk in step with what I have already ordained. When you openly acknowledge what I am doing in your body, in your resources, in your joy, and in your direction, you are stepping out of the place of an observer and into the place of a co-laborer. That is not superstition. It is the mark of a faith that knows how to stand upright, not hiding behind silence out of fear of being wrong. Heaven does not need you to speak loudly, but it does need you to speak truthfully with confidence placed in me, not in passing emotions. That agreement may not change everything instantly, but it changes you first. It causes you to stop talking about your life as a chain of risks, and to begin seeing it as a journey being led. When you name restoration, you are also accepting the responsibility to live in a way that fits it, caring for your body as a gift, managing finances as a steward, nurturing joy as a source of life, and guarding direction as a sacred compass. A miracle does not fall upon a life that refuses order. It blossoms in a life willing to be rearranged. I am not pressuring you, but I am inviting you to do this while your heart is still tender. While clarity has just been given, do not wait until everything is perfect before you agree, because faith does not wait for favorable conditions. When you confess what I have spoken, you are placing a seal upon a process that is unfolding not with pressure, but with trust. And wherever you are on the journey, I am there with you. my eyes not turning away, my heart not changing. What I began, I will also complete, step by step, layer by layer, until you are not only restored, but become a new person, able to see clearly, to live steady, and to walk without fear through the in-between places of your life. I know you have carried this stretch of road in silence for so long that even you can no longer name your own feelings. The nights you closed the door were not to escape the world, but because you did not have the strength to explain to anyone what was happening inside. You thought that if no one saw it, the pain would be lighter, but I was there not as one standing outside to observe, but as a father sitting very near enough to hear even the sighs you never formed into words. I do not see your tears as weakness. I see them as the sign of a soul still alive, still hopeful, even when exhaustion makes letting go seem easier. You have wasted nothing when you cried. Every tear you have shed carries a story you never fully told. Some came from disappointment after you prayed for so long and still saw no change. Some flowed from the pain of being misunderstood, overlooked, treated unfairly, and not having the strength to defend yourself. And some came quietly from shame when you thought you should have been stronger, should have believed better. I have not turned away from a single one of them. I receive them, because I understand how much you have had to brace yourself just to keep living through the day. But, my child, I want you to see those tears in a different light. They are not only emotional reactions, they are sacred signs of a process unfolding in the deep places. When you cry and do not let go of me, you are sowing something rare, perseverance. When you keep believing even when you no longer feel certain, you are sowing surrender. When you choose to pray instead of shutting your heart, even if the prayer is only a choked sob, you are sowing faith in its most stripped-down form. And a seed, by the law I established, never remains in the ground forever. I do not plant hope in you and then forget it. I do not allow you to pass through pain only to learn how to endure. Everything you are living through is being rewoven by me, not to erase your memory, but to give that memory a new meaning. You have not seen the harvest because the seed is still beneath the soil, where there is no light and no applause. Yet it is precisely in that darkness that life quietly happens. Roots grow before the sprout breaks through. And what I am doing in you follows that order, not the impatient rhythm of human hearts. There are moments you wonder whether I hear you, whether your prayers reach heaven or only echo back into the small room. I tell you, with gentleness and certainty, not one of your cries falls into empty space. But I do not always answer in the way you expect. Some requests must be answered with waiting, because if I gave you the outcome immediately, you would not yet be steady enough to carry it far. I am building in you an inner strength no one can see, but it will be the very thing that holds you upright when what you asked for truly arrives. The enemy tried to convince you that this pain is proof that I have forgotten you. He whispered that you have believed too long, hoped too much, and now it is time to accept that nothing will change. But I am doing the complete opposite. I am taking the very material the enemy meant to use to make you collapse, and I am turning it into the foundation of what will endure. Your pain is not permitted to become the grave of your dreams. It is becoming the soil for something deeper, truer, and longer lasting than what you once asked for. You will recognize this not in one explosive moment, but in subtle shifts. One day you will wake up and find your heart lighter even though your circumstances have not changed. Then you will notice you no longer react as you once did to the things that used to wound you. You will begin choosing peace over battle, trust over control. That is not you becoming weaker, that is you being healed. And in those quiet changes, the harvest has already begun, even if you do not yet have the language to name it. I know you want a clear confirmation that your time has come. I do not say this to stir your emotions, but to set you in the posture of one about to receive. Everything is moving without noise, without display, yet unmistakably real. The prayers you lifted in weariness are being untied, knot by knot. The question, how much longer, is being replaced by an answer you did not expect, not with thunder from the sky, but with a door opening at the moment you are mature enough to walk through it. But before you go farther, I need you to understand this so your whole journey will not become distorted. The miracle is not the final destination. What I treasure more than the outcome is the person you are becoming along the way. If you only wait for the day the tears disappear, you will miss what I have formed in you through every single tear. A softened heart, a faith no longer dependent on feelings, a humility that does not need to be recognized. These will stay with you longer than any specific answer. When you look back, you will not only see that you made it through, you will see that you were remade. You will understand that if I had removed the pain sooner, you might have lost the depth you carry now. And when you tell your story to others, you will not boast of victory, but testify to faithfulness. Your tears will no longer shame you. They will become a language other weary souls can understand and find hope through. So do not rush away while I am still speaking. This journey is not closing. It is stepping into a new layer of meaning. I have spoken to you about the value of tears, about the coming harvest, and about the shifting already underway. But what I am about to lead you into is not only receiving it, is living differently after you have received. For what brings me joy is not that you are comforted for a moment, but that you walk with new meaning, with a purpose no longer revolving around old pain. And here, you will begin to understand why everything happened not to break you, but to prepare you for something far greater. I know the road you've just walked has left your heart weary, not because you are weak, but because you hoped with sincerity. You poured your whole heart into doors that seemed about to open, emptied your trust into what you believed were the answers I had given for your life. And then, in the moment you hadn't yet understood what was happening, everything closed. Without warning, without explanation, without giving you time to prepare. You ache because you think you were deprived, abandoned, rejected. But I want you to listen very carefully. From the deepest part of your soul, there is no door I close without the intention of preserving life for you. I do not act on impulse, nor do I leave you to fall into meaningless emptiness. Each time I place my hand upon a door and shut it, it is because I have seen the entire road beyond it where you have only seen the beginning. There are bonds that once made you believe you had finally found where you belonged. You called it love, companionship, destiny. But I saw what would unfold after the first smiles, a slow wearing down. Quiet compromises with values that do not come from me. The gradual weakening of the inner voice I planted in you from the start. I saw how your soul would have to shrink itself to fit inside that relationship. I saw the times you would stay silent to keep the peace. The times you would set truth aside to keep someone close. And I knew that if it continued, you would no longer recognize yourself. So I ended it not to punish you, but to save you from an erosion you were not clear-eyed enough to name. You see only the loss in front of you. I see an entire future being threatened. And there are opportunities you desired so deeply you begged for them through tears. You believed that if you could just step through that door, your life would finally turn a page. You imagined stability, recognition, the feeling of at last, I've been chosen. But what you did not see was the cost behind the glow. I saw mornings when you would wake with an empty heart even while everything looked enough on the outside. I saw how that environment would suffocate the sacred life within you, turning you into a machine driven by pressure and comparison, where your worth would be measured by performance rather than by the identity I have given you. I would not let you enter a place that would take your soul day by day in exchange for temporary reassurance. When I stop what you long for, it is not because I am withholding, but because I know you too well to hand you over to a way of living that would make you lose yourself. There are plans that seemed firmly built, intentions you believed were only one step away from taking shape. You saw yourself close enough to touch success. You began to calculate the next moves. You grew used to the feeling of control, and then everything collapsed so quickly you couldn't even react. You asked why I would allow that after you had tried with all your strength. But understand this, not every foundation that looks strong to you can stand in the light of truth. Some things are erected from talent, ambition, and personal will, yet do not arise from humility and obedience. If I let it succeed, you would slowly begin to believe you no longer needed me. You would start walking by your own strength, and pride would slip into places you never expected. I dismantled it not because it was evil, but because it was not yet right in timing, not yet right in order, and not yet right in motive to sustain you for the long road ahead. My child, every time you call it rejection, I call it protection. Every time you think you are being pushed out, I know I am pulling you out of what would wound you more deeply. You see a door closing in front of you. I see a fence being raised around your soul. I do not promise you will not hurt when what is familiar departs. I do not deny that your tears are real, but I want you to know that not a single tear falls that I do not use to water what I am quietly preparing. While you are still looking back at what you lost, I have already begun arranging what is coming. While you grieve old doors, I am laying foundations for paths you never imagined could exist. There are silences I allow, not to leave you empty, but to give your heart enough space to be healed, space to be purified from old attachments, space for you to learn to trust me, not for what I give, but because I am the one who remains with you. I do not merely replace what has left. I do more than that. I restructure. I expand. I multiply. What I am preparing is not a copy of the past, but a more mature, deeper, more fitting version for the person you are becoming. You may not see the change right away. You may still be standing in days that seem to hold no progress. But I want you to trust that everything I have removed was to create new capacity within you. The empty spaces are not signs of lack, they are invitations to something greater. When you stop clinging to what no longer belongs to you, your hands will be free enough to receive what I place into them. And that, my child, will not only be better, it will be truer, healthier, and far more enduring than what has departed. I do not end things to make you smaller. I end things so you may grow. Stand more firmly and step into what I prepared long ago, even what you never dared to dream. I say this to you not with the voice of thunder, but with the heartbeat of a father who has watched you for a long time in silence. There are movements unfolding around your life that you have not yet named, not because they are too small, but because they are taking place in depths your eyes cannot reach. People who once passed through your mind as distant possibilities are now being shaped and guided by me to move closer into the orbit of your life. Hands you once thought you could never reach are now being set in the right place to support you when the time ripens. Not because you have become good enough, but because I know you have become soft enough not to turn help into dependency, and not to turn favor into pride. For a long time, you have had to manage by your own strength, learning to survive within limits, learning to accept impossible as part of fate. But I have never considered those limits a final sentence. I have used them as a mold, so you would not break when the wide places come. Resources you once thought were only for others are now being brought into the light in a way you can receive without being overwhelmed. Not everything comes at once, because if it did, your heart would be thrown into confusion. I let each piece appear in its proper rhythm, so you can walk and learn to trust without needing to see the entire road. There are ideas I am planting in your mind when you least expect it, not like a blinding lightning strike, but like a lamp being switched on in a familiar room. You will notice that problems that once trapped you no longer stand unchanged, not because they vanish on their own, but because the way you look at them has been altered. I do not always remove difficulty. Often I give you a new perspective so it no longer rules you. These thoughts are not wishful imagination, and they are not empty self-comfort. They are the result of an ordered arrangement released when your heart is calm enough to receive them. You need to understand this, so you do not mistake it. What is forming is not a dream you have painted to escape reality. This has been determined and declared in the unseen before you sensed any sign at all. When I speak, I do not negotiate with reality, I reconstruct it. What is out of rhythm will be returned to its rightful place. What is tangled will be untied. What has been stuck for a long time will begin to move again. Not loudly, not for display, but undeniably real. Heaven and earth do not argue with my word, they answer with quiet, precise obedience. And in this shifting rhythm, I am speaking to you with an assurance you must receive, not with impulsive emotion, but with mature faith. The season in which you had to live with the fear of not having enough, calculating every step because you were afraid it would not be sufficient, is coming to its close. Not because you suddenly overflow with abundance, but because I am teaching you to live from fullness even before you hold it all in your hands. The abundance I speak of is not only numbers, it is an inner state. You are no longer ruled by fear of lack in your decisions. When fear retreats, you will see doors opening in places you once overlooked because you thought you were unworthy. The things that have been delayed are not dead. They are waiting for the right time to be released without causing you further harm. I do not hurry to loosen every knot at once, because I know your capacity. But layer by layer, I am freeing what has been restrained, not to overwhelm you, but so you can walk steadily. Roads that were not blocked because I refused you, but because if you had entered then, you would have paid with your own peace. Now, as your heart has changed, I allow the way to be cleared in a manner that does not make you lose yourself. There are things you once lost that you do not dare to mention again, because the pain attached to them is too real. I do not minimize those losses, nor do I coldly call them lessons, but I want you to know nothing has been taken from you that I did not see, and no injustice lies beyond my reach. Restoration does not always come in the same form, but it always carries the same value, often repaid with a depth you have never known. You will realize that what you receive back is not merely what was lost, but a more mature version of you able to hold, to keep, and to cherish. I do not say these things to make you impatient, nor to have you count days and months. I say them so you can be at peace and live fully in each present day, no longer shrinking from the future in fear. When you stop straining to hold on, you will be surprised to find yourself being placed into a current. That current will not sweep you away. It will carry you to the very place I have ordained. And when you look back, you will understand not every change happens in a moment, but there is a moment when you realize everything has been changing for a long time. My child, keep your heart open, yet not impatient, hopeful, yet not demanding, trusting, yet not bargaining. What I have spoken over your life does not need you to defend it with anxiety, nor to force it forward with restlessness. I am doing my part with absolute faithfulness. Your part is to remain, to walk, and to live like one who no longer stands at the end of the road, but at the threshold of a new season where you will not only receive more, but become deeper, freer, and nearer to me than ever before. I know you are tempted to close yourself off because you think you have heard enough, understood enough, and come almost to the end of the path you needed to walk. But I ask you to stay a little longer, not to hear something novel for your ears, but for your heart to open at a deeper level. There are things you can only understand when you are weary from gripping so tightly, emptied by trying to preserve what you have, and beginning to wonder why the tighter you hold, the drier your soul becomes. It is at that threshold that I can speak to you about the mathematics of the kingdom of heaven, a logic that does not run on the fear of scarcity, but on a trust that dares to open its hands. From very early on, you were taught that to be safe you must store up, to be steady you must hold on to what is yours, to avoid loss you must calculate every outcome. Those things may help you survive in the world, but if you carry that same mindset into your relationship with me, you will gradually turn faith into a locked safe. You pray, yet keep the door bolted. You serve, yet stay guarded. You love, yet always keep an exit route ready. And then you wonder why your heart is tired, why joy keeps running thin even though you have done nothing wrong. You are not wrong, you are simply using the wrong frame of reference. In my kingdom, life is not sustained by a clenched fist, but by an unbroken flow. Whatever is blocked for too long begins to spoil, even if it was once good. When you keep grace to yourself because you fear tomorrow will bring none, that very fear will erode today's gratitude. When you hold back your gifts, your compassion, even the goodness I have placed within you because you are afraid of lacking, you unwittingly turn a gift into a burden. I did not give to you so you would become a warehouse. I gave so you would become a channel. Let me lead you back to a familiar image you think you already understand too well. That day, no one was expecting abundance. Before them was only a weary crowd, an empty place, and a portion of food so small it hardly seemed worth counting. By your way of calculating, the wisest choice would have been to keep it for yourselves, or at most, to share a token amount and accept the shortage. But what I did was not a magic trick of multiplying food before it was given away. I began with something very fragile. I received that small portion, spoke blessing, and then broke it. The miracle did not begin where there was much, but where someone dared to place what little they had into my hands without conditions. You often think you must see overflow before you dare to give, must be certain before you dare to open your heart. But in my order, the act of giving while you are not yet overflowing is the doorway through which abundance enters. Not because I need your lack in order to perform a miracle, but because when you give in trust, you step out of the center of yourself. And when I am no longer forced to orbit your fear, I finally have room to do what I desire. That little portion, as long as it remains in your hands, carries only your limits. But when it is placed in mine, it enters the rhythm of the kingdom of heaven. I know this confuses you, because it runs against every survival instinct. You fear that if you open your hands, others will take. If you lift others up, you will be forgotten. If you give your care away, you will have no one left to lean on. But I want you to look deeper. What drains you is not giving, but giving from the wrong motives. When you share to be recognized, you will grow weary from constantly proving yourself. When you love in order to be repaid, you will be wounded because you cannot control another's response. When you serve to store up spiritual points, you will soon become bitter, feeling that I have not repaid you enough. That is not flow, that is transaction. I invite you out of that transactional way of living, not by forcing yourself to strain harder, but by returning honestly to your own heart. Let your giving flow because you have already received, not so that you may receive more. Let your kindness rise from inner fullness, not from the fear of abandonment. When you give in freedom, you will not need to tally how much you have given, nor keep checking how much remains. Then what happens is not only outward increase, but inward expansion, where your heart becomes wider than fear, and your trust greater than your calculations. You will gradually discover something strange. the more you live like a flowing stream. The less obsessed you become with outcomes. You no longer give in order to trigger something. No longer live well in hopes of trading up for something better. You begin to live rightly because a new nature is being formed within you. And as that nature grows, the things you once worried about find their place on their own. Not because I reward you for giving, but because you have stepped into a life rhythm that is aligned with my kingdom, where life naturally multiplies. Do not think I call you to become a stream so you will be worn down for others. I never invite you to lose yourself. The flow of the kingdom is not depletion, but continual replenishing. When you give what I have placed within you, I do not leave you empty. I fill you in another way, deeper, steadier, more enduring. There are things I cannot pour into you while your hands remain closed. Not because I am stingy, but because I honor your freedom. And when you have lived long enough in that rhythm of flow, you will understand the most important thing I am quietly forming is not outward signs. Those signs may come and go, may be much or little, may delight you for a moment, but not remain for long. What I am building is a new person within you, one who does not panic in the in-between, does not cling when it is time to release, does not shrink back when invited to give. A person who knows how to trust without needing to see, to give without needing to keep, to live without bargaining. When you become that person, your very life becomes a testimony without noise, without display. You will not only pass through the in-between, but carry light for those who are still standing there. And I, your Father, will remain in every breath, not as a reward, but as the source of life that never runs dry. I want you to stay a little longer in this quiet rhythm, because what I am about to say is not meant for haste. Some gifts I give you are not for you to store away like private keepsakes, nor to use as proof of your own specialness. The miracles I sow into your life have a living nature. They breathe, they grow, and they must be allowed to circulate so they do not become choked. When you grip what I give, it stops at the exact size you are holding, never dead, yet never expanding. But when you dare to open your hands, when you allow it to flow through you to others, you will be surprised to find that you are the first to be filled again. This is not a trick, and it is not a condition. It is the natural rhythm of the kingdom of heaven, where life truly lives only when it is given away. I know you once thought you had to wait until you were strong enough, steady enough, full enough before you could share. You fear that if you speak of what you are living, you will be misunderstood. If you give away what you have just received, you will return to the emptiness you started with. But my child, I do not give to you in a way that accumulates and then slowly drains away. What I give carries a continual supply, so long as you do not lock it up with fear. In my world, giving does not diminish, it reveals the spring. Sowing is not loss, but placing seed where it can multiply. Sharing is not making yourself smaller, it is allowing the greater work I am doing to be made clearer. Something very quiet is happening in your heart right now, and I want you to recognize it. When I speak of sharing, you do not think of crowds or grand deeds. In your mind, I am gently calling specific faces by name. Someone you know is weary but will not say it aloud. Someone who once seemed strong, but has quietly begun to retreat inward. Someone you have not spoken with for a long time, not because of distance, but because both of you are afraid to touch what is still unhealed. You can pretend you do not see, but I know you see very clearly. For it is I who am placing those faces within your heart, not to pressure you, but to invite you into the role you have been prepared for a long time. Do not think you must say something impressive, perfectly correct, or fully complete. What I need from you is not the ability to persuade, but the honesty of someone who has been in the dark and knows what it was like when the light came. Simply pass on what I have spoken to you in your own voice, through your own not yet perfect story. When you dare to do that, you do not only help another stand again, you are also confirming to your own heart that what I am doing in you is real. Your faith, in that moment, will no longer be an idea. It will become living action. I know you worry that the other person may not listen, may be indifferent, or may not respond at all. But my child, your responsibility is not the outcome, it is obedience. A seed does not sprout immediately before the sower's eyes, yet it is still quietly at work in the soil. Some words you speak today will bear fruit only after many years, at a time when you no longer remember you ever sowed them. And some words you thought were small will become a lifeline for someone at the very moment they were close to letting go. You cannot see it all, but I can. When you choose to share, you step out of the center of yourself and into my flow. And there, you will discover something gentle. You are no longer alone on the journey of faith. What I do in you is no longer only to support you, but begins to weave you into my larger story with the people around you. Life multiplies not because you strive harder, but because you stop keeping it for yourself. And in that uncalculated giving, your heart will widen in a way that no personal achievement could ever accomplish. So do not delay any longer. My child, do not wait until you feel holy enough, strong enough, or ready enough. This moment is precisely when I am very near to you, just as I am very near to those I have placed upon your heart. A short message, a sincere call, an unpolished sharing, any of these can become a channel for my grace to flow through. When you walk in that simplicity, you will not be depleted. On the contrary, you will be renewed. For in my kingdom, the current never impoverishes the one who gives. It only makes more visible the life that is moving through them. And when you choose to become that current, you will understand more deeply than ever that the miracle I begin in you was never meant to end with you. I am speaking to you now in a very slow voice, very close, the way a father sits down beside his child at the end of a long day, not to correct in haste, but to touch the deepest place in your heart. You have passed through the in-between. You have learned not to panic when you cannot yet see the outcome. You have practiced not clenching what I have closed. And now I am bringing you to one final step of maturity, quiet, unshowy, yet decisive for the depth of your entire life of faith. This is the moment when you no longer live only for the relationship between me and you, but begin to allow that relationship to overflow outward, to pass through you, to touch others. For true faith never stands still if it does not flow. It dries up if it is not given away. It folds in on itself and becomes a selfish kind of safety you may not even recognize. I know there is a very human hesitation in you. You fear that if you give, you will lack. You fear that if you share, you will not have enough. You fear that if you open your hands, what you are holding will slip away. You are not bad for thinking this. You are simply living by what the world has taught you for many years, that you must hold on in order to keep. You must stockpile in order to feel secure. You must take care of yourself first before you can think of others. But my kingdom moves to an entirely different rhythm. Here, life is not measured by how much you store up, but by how freely you allow it to circulate. When you try to keep blessing for yourself alone, that very blessing becomes heavy. When you allow it to pass through you, it will renew you day by day. You need to understand this clearly so that you do not unknowingly turn sharing into a kind of spiritual calculation. I am not looking for people who scatter good things in exchange for a reward, nor do I need testimonies told to impress. What I seek is a transparent heart, willing to give out of love, out of obedience, out of trust that I am working far beyond what you can control. When you share only to activate something for yourself, Your heart will quickly grow weary and empty. But when you share because you can no longer keep what you have received to yourself, you will step into a very strange joy, the joy of one who is allowed to stand in heaven's current. Let me make it even clearer, because I do not want you to misunderstand. When you open your mouth to speak a word that strengthens, when you send a message that carries life, when you share something I have touched within you, two things happen at once, even if you do not see them immediately. The one who receives is reached not because you are great, but because I use your simplicity to knock on the door of their heart, and at the same time, you yourself are widened, like soil being dug deeper so that new water can flow through. Blessing is not diminished when you give it, it simply changes form, becomes more alive, spreads farther, and remains with you longer. Picture a small flame burning in the night. If you cover it because you fear the wind, it will gradually weaken for lack of air. But if you use that very flame to light another, you lose none of its light. Instead, the darkness around you begins to retreat. When many flames are lit, the night is no longer frightening. You do not need to understand every mechanism of light. You only need the courage to bring the flame you have close to someone else. Faith is the same. It does not grow in isolation, but in overflow. I know you often think you are not good enough to share, not strong enough to support, not mature enough to speak with weight. But I did not choose you because you are enough. I chose you because you are willing. What I have placed in you does not need to be perfect to touch others. It only needs to be true. A word spoken from a place that has known pain, has known doubt, has stood in the in-between, yet still chose to trust, carries more power than 1,000 hollow phrases. You do not need to preach, you only need to bear witness by your presence. And so I urge you, not with a rigid command, but with the great trust I place in you. If right now a name, a face, or a group of people is echoing within you, do not brush it aside. I often speak to you through such gentle promptings. Send out what you have just received, no embellishing, no showing off, only sincerity. Write a few lines from your own heart, saying, God has placed this on my heart for you. I believe it did not come to you by accident. Read slowly. Stay with it, because this may be what you need to stand up again. When you do that, you are not merely forwarding a message, you are becoming a bridge. Do not underestimate that act. In this noisy world, a word shared with a pure motive can become the only foothold for someone who is teetering. And the very moment you press send, the very moment you open your mouth, the very moment you dare to let what I give pass through you, the second wave of the miracle begins to move in your life. The first wave began when you chose to remain, chose to believe, chose to let me refine you. The second wave is stronger, deeper, because it does not only change you, it changes how you are present in other people's lives. I am not telling you to do something grand. I am telling you to do something real. Sharing with 3 people or with 1 is not as important as whether you obey. Sending it to your family group, or speaking privately to a friend, or posting where you normally show up, the important thing is not the platform, but the flow. When you step into that flow, you will discover something very strange. Your joy will no longer depend on how much you receive, but on how you have allowed me to pass through you. And then, when you look back, you will understand why I have patiently led you through every stage. The in-between was not only where you learned to believe, it was where I formed you into someone who can carry that faith to others. You are not only a recipient of grace, you are a channel of grace. You are not only comforted, you become comfort. You are not only illuminated, you become a light set on a lampstand. And when you live this way, you will no longer fear lack, because you have touched the spring that never runs dry, me. I want you to pause for a moment, not to think with logic, but to let your heart catch up to what I am saying. When blessing begins to touch your life, the natural reflex of human beings is to close their hands, to keep it for themselves as if it might vanish if released. But I see deeper than what you are holding. There are things I place in your hands not for you to store away, but for you to allow them to pass straight through you, like blood that nourishes the whole body instead of stopping at one point. Blessing, when held back too long, will no longer feel like blessing. It slowly becomes anxiety, vigilance, fear of losing. But when you allow it to be shared, it will always be renewed, because its source is not in you, but in me. Understand this through a very ordinary picture. Water does not spoil because it is little. Water spoils because it stands still. A small stream can remain clear if it keeps flowing, while a great lake can grow murky if it has no outlet. Your spiritual life is the same. When you learn gratitude but do not learn to give, when you receive support but do not become one who supports, when you are healed but do not open your heart to feel compassion for another's pain, you are unintentionally letting the life within you stop circulating. I do not accuse you for this, because you are only trying to protect what is precious. But I gently remind you what is most precious will not be lost when it is given. It is only lost when it is held in the wrong way. Perhaps you think you are not yet full enough to become a source for someone. You look at your own lack and tell yourself you must be steadier, stronger, more secure before you dare to share. But I do not wait for you to be perfect before I act. I have always worked through people who are still fragile, because fragility keeps the flow from being clogged by pride. When you share from the place where you once broke, your words carry weight. When you love from the place where you once hurt, that love will not be fake. And when you give not because you have excess, but because you trust, you are stepping into the logic of my kingdom, where multiplication does not begin with quantity, but with obedience. I know there are times you wonder whether spreading goodness truly makes a difference, or whether it is only a small drop in a vast sea. But my child, I have never despised a drop of water placed in the right spot. A timely word of comfort can keep a soul from despair. A story shared in truth can free someone from silently blaming themselves. A small act, when driven by sincere love, can become the starting point of an entirely new journey. You do not need to see every result in order to keep giving. You only need to trust that I am guiding that current farther than your eyes can reach. And now I want you to understand more deeply the space you are in at this moment. You think you are only listening, only watching, only stopping by for a while. But I tell you with solemn tenderness, this is not merely a place where information is transmitted. It is a meeting point. When you open your heart to what is being sown here, you are standing before an altar not made of stone, but of attention and a hunger to be renewed. Every message shared is not meant to impress, but to awaken, not to entertain, but to illuminate. I am present, not loudly, but truly. In every moment, you allow the word to go deeper than your first emotions. There are chains that do not break by strength, but break when the truth is spoken at the right time. There are doors that do not open by striving, but open by awakening. And there are miracles that do not arrive with cheering, but come when you quietly change the way you see, the way you live, the way you treat others. When you choose to become a flowing stream, you not only carry blessing farther than yourself, but you are also drawn into the movement of life. You no longer stand still in the fear of loss, but walk in the confidence that I am always enough for you, even when you give. I do not need you to prove anything through grand promises. I only invite you to make a quiet but decisive choice within you. Will not let what is good stop with you. When you commit to living this way, your life will become a word without sound, a testimony without a stage. And before I unveil what is deeper, what I am preparing for you, I want you to stand firm right here. In this awareness, you are not only a receiver, you are one who is sent, not to carry the whole world, but to be faithful with the portion of the flow entrusted to you. When you live true to that, you will realize that the miracle is not only happening around you, it is being formed within you. Little by little, steady and irreversible. I want you to understand this with both mind and heart, not merely through the passing emotion of a moment. What you are hearing, what you are touching, is not floating, words spoken to sound pleasant or to soothe you temporarily. These are words set in place beforehand, kept within my wisdom, reserved for very specific moments you will walk into. There are days ahead when your heart will sway because you must choose, because you must decide while you still cannot see the whole picture. And in those days, these words will rise within you like a small lamp, yet enough to keep you from stepping off the path. It is not accidental that you are hearing this today, and it is not coincidence that it touches you at this exact time. Everything has its season, and I am using this season to prepare you for what comes next. I have seen the crossroads you have not reached, the pressures you have not yet been able to name, the tests that will not be loud yet will run deep enough to try your heart. That is why I am planting guidance in you even now, not to make you afraid, but to anchor you. Some revelations are not for peaceful days, but for the days you need discernment more than ever, and I am doing this for you, not by pushing you to move faster, but by making your roots deeper. When you understand that your life is not drifting, you will stop seeing everything as scattered events. You will begin to recognize a quiet hand arranging things, never forcing, but leading with patient love. Now I need you to respond, not with grand promises, but with small and sincere actions. There are two things I invite you to do. As a seal upon this sacred moment you and I are sharing. The first, I want you to press like on this video, not as a mechanical gesture, not out of habit, and certainly not because others are doing it. I want you to do it with the awareness that you are agreeing. It is your way of saying to heaven, I do not only hear, I receive. I do not only feel moved, I believe. I do not only stand outside, I step in. That light touch of your finger in the unseen realm becomes a great reply. It is the yes you speak before what I am sowing into your life today. When you do that in faith, you are aligning with me, not in form, but in spirit. It is not an empty ritual, but a public confession of faith that you choose to trust my word more than fleeting emotions, that you open your heart for my power to move, that you will not close yourself off from what I am beginning. I do not need you to help me spread anything, but I know that when you dare to stand openly on the side of faith, you are opening doors you cannot open by yourself. Your agreement is the soil where this seed takes root. And when the seed has taken root, the harvest is no longer something you must strain to seize. I say this to you with the gentleness of a father. Do not treat lightly the small acts done in faith. There are things the world considers insignificant, yet, in the kingdom of heaven, they carry spiritual weight. When you press like in faith, you place yourself into another current one, where everything is no longer limited by calculating logic. You are saying that you trust I know what you need before you can even name it. And that very trust opens your heart to receive more, not material things first, but timely guidance. I do not promise that everything will change immediately after this moment, but I promise you will no longer be alone as you step into the decisions ahead. Some choices will not be easy, yet you will find within you a new clarity, a peace that does not depend on outcomes. That is the sign you have aligned with me. When you choose to answer my word, you allow me to work more deeply, quietly, but steadily, and in that steady work, you will see your life opening in ways you never anticipated. Do not let this moment pass like content heard and forgotten. Let it become a small but real marker in your journey of faith. I do not need you to understand everything right now. I only need you to trust that I am leading you, step by step, at the right time. When you respond in faith, even through a very small act, you are telling me you are ready to continue, and for me, your willingness is enough. The rest I will take care of. Before I release you from this holy moment, I want you to be still for a little while, not with your body, but with your heart. There are words that, when spoken, are not merely sounds passing through the ears, but commands issued in the spiritual realm, beginning to rearrange what you have not seen, not touched, not fully understood. And right now I am not speaking as an idea, nor as a temporary comfort. I speak as a father laying a hand upon your head, calling your name, establishing what will follow you in the days ahead. The words I speak do not need the agreement of circumstances, because they are not born from circumstances. They are born from the authority of the one who knows your way in and your way out better than you do. I place clarity upon your mind, not the kind of intelligence that makes you proud, but wisdom that helps you discern when you stand among many options that look alike in form, yet are far apart in consequence. I give your mind rest from the circles of repeated thoughts, the questions with no exit, the worries that have worn you down in silence. From now on, when you face what is new, I will not let you step in with confusion, but with light, sufficient for each sure step. The strategies you need will not come in noise, but in moments when you learn to listen deeply, and I will remind you of what you must remember at the exact time you need it. I place prosperity upon the work of your hands, not the kind that makes you chase numbers, but the kind that bears enduring fruit. Wherever you labor with an upright heart, I will cause increase to rise from there, even if at first it seems small. I bless not only the results, but also the process, so you do not collapse before you can see the outcome. What you touch with faithfulness will no longer dry up as before, because I breathe life into it, and when you look back, you will realize it was not because you became more capable, but because I was with you in every detail that seemed so ordinary. I place peace upon your household, so the place you return to is no longer a space of tension, guardedness, or prolonged exhaustion. I soften conversations that once wounded you. I untie misunderstandings that have accumulated through the years. In that home, I cause provision to arrive on time, not in excess to waste, but in sufficiency, so fear no longer rules. I place my presence there, not as a religious symbol, but as a new rhythm of life, where even the smallest corners carry the breath of safety and rest. And from that home, you will relearn how to live slowly, live truly, and live not as a way of escaping. I place hope upon your future, not a vague hope, but a clear direction. Step by step, I do not show you the entire road, but I give you enough light for the next stretch. The promises you once heard will not dissolve with time. They are being nurtured in seasons when you thought you were standing still. When you look ahead, I will not let you see only empty spaces, but gradually the meaning of each segment you have already walked. And when you are mature enough to carry what I entrust to you, I will show you that the future is no longer a worry, but an invitation to walk in trust. I place abundance upon the generations after you, so you do not live only for your present. The cycles of lack, unrest, and fear that once repeated in your line will no longer have the authority to shape the future. I plant a different foundation in your children, where they grow not under survival pressure, but with the awareness that they are cared for and guided. What you are learning through tears today will become wisdom that protects them tomorrow, and through you, I begin to rewrite a new story for your family, not loudly, but firmly and enduringly. I breathe life into the work you are doing, so it not only sustains your body, but also carries meaning. The fruit I bring forth from it will not be fleeting, but the outcome of perseverance and faithfulness. There are things you do that no one sees, Yet I have recorded them. There are efforts you believe are invisible. Yet I am using them to lay the foundation for something greater. When you no longer work merely to prove your worth, you will feel joy return, and that joy will keep you steady through seasons of testing. I place healing upon your relationships, so the connections around you are no longer a constant source of pain. I teach you to set boundaries without hardening your heart, to love without losing yourself. The relationships I keep for you will become support, not burden. The relationships I allow to leave will no longer carve deep wounds, but become lessons that mature you. And in that refining, you will not be lonely, because you will learn that staying with what is right is more precious than staying with what is familiar. While I am blessing you, I am also dismantling things, the plans that have been built up to hold you back, whether they come from the outside or from the distorted beliefs you have carried for many years. I am tearing down layer by layer. The old patterns that have kept bringing you back to the starting point will no longer rule over you as before. I am cutting the invisible cords that have bound you to lack in your thinking, in your emotions, and in your expectations. The structures that have imprisoned you in the fear of loss, of abandonment, of failure will no longer stand, because the light has been switched on, and I proclaim over you a new season, not with slogans, but with real movement. Your body will gradually rediscover a healthy rhythm of life, not only being healed but learning to care for itself. Your finances will be open to new pathways, not by chance or luck, but by guided wisdom. Joy will return, not noisy or flashy, but deep enough that it is not easily taken away. The direction of your life will become clearer with each step, so that you no longer walk driven by the fear of getting it wrong, but in the trust that I am going ahead of you. And when you step out of this moment, I do not promise that you will never face trials, but I promise you will not walk alone. The words I have spoken do not remain suspended in the air. They go with you into your everyday life, into the small decisions, into the days that seem ordinary and unremarkable. You do not need to try to carry everything, because I have already placed the weight in its rightful place. Walk in peace, for what I have begun, I will bring to completion, and you will come to see that even in the in-between, I am still there, quiet yet faithful, leading you step by step toward the fullness of life. I am speaking to you in this moment not to stir up passing emotions, nor to have you soothe yourself with beautiful words. What I am giving you does not belong to the realm of mere wishes or optimism. It flows from the deepest place of my being, where my decrees are never withdrawn and my intentions are never altered. When I allow something to be set in motion in your life, it does not hang suspended between hope and chance. It has been positioned, secured, fastened to my very faithful nature. You may still tremble and hesitate, but what I declare does not tremble with your feelings. It stands firm even when your heart is still unsettled. I want you to understand this. What is now at work in your life is not being sustained by your ability to hold on, but by my refusal to let go. When I place my word upon a journey, that word carries within itself the power to fulfill itself. It does not need you to strain to prove it. Your faith is not a tool to force me to act, but a doorway for you to step into what I have already decided to do. That is why faith does not need to be loud or tense. And it certainly does not need to be haunted by the fear that if you loosen your grip for a moment, everything will collapse. What comes from me is not that fragile. It is resilient because it is anchored in my faithfulness, not hanging on your sense of stability. I know you have grown used to living in a world where every commitment has conditions attached, where promises so often break before they are fulfilled. That is what makes it hard for you to believe that there is one who does not change, who does not go back on his word, who does not grow weary of waiting. But I am not like the disappointments you have known. I do not promise just to soothe and then forget. I do not initiate only to withdraw. When I act, I bring things to completion, not because you are more deserving than others, but because I am the one who cannot betray myself. This means that even when you do not yet understand the road ahead, you are still being held within a plan that does not go astray. There are moments when you think I am moving mountains for the whole world and forget that I once moved all of heaven to find you. If I did not spare my only son in order to draw you out of death, how could I then be indifferent to the situations that are suffocating you today? You see delay, I see preparation. You see silence, I see arrangement. You see yourself having to struggle alone. I see every fragment of your life being set in place so that nothing is wasted. Even the mistakes you regret, if you put them into my hands, I know how to turn them into material for your growth. Therefore, I am not calling you to walk with a fearful mindset that tomorrow will steal away what you have received today. What I give is not something that slips easily from your hands like sand through your fingers. Yet I also do not want you to misunderstand and think that a miracle will stand on its own without wise stewardship. I am the one who works wonders, but I am also the one who teaches you how to live with those wonders. For the hardest part is not to receive, but to keep what you have received from being distorted by old habits, old ways of thinking, and old fears. You are about to step into a new stage, where the question is no longer, will I act, but how will you live with what I have done? There you will learn that abundance does not begin on the outside, but in an inner life that has been put in order. A grateful heart will keep your blessing from growing hardened. A watchful spirit will guard the miracle from complacency. A life with order will keep you from spending grace carelessly. I do not give to you so that you can boast, nor so that you can return to living as before. I give so that you may be transformed, and through you that life may continue to spread. Tomorrow, as I continue to speak to you, I will lead you deeper into the art of preserving what is sacred in the midst of the ordinary. I will show you how to protect what is precious from the slow erosion of hurry and comparison. I will teach you how to build, layer by layer, so that what I have begun will not merely survive, but multiply. Not by the pressure to be endlessly strong, but by faithfulness in the small things you once overlooked. I will speak to you about standing firm when feelings no longer carry you, and about how to live so that the blessing does not turn into a burden you have to drag. Now, before you go, I want you to carry with you a deep rest. Not a rest because everything is finished, but a rest because you know who is leading you. You do not need to control tomorrow, for I am already there before you. You do not need to hold everything so tightly, for my hand is stronger than yours. Walk at a pace slow enough that you do not lose the ability to listen, with a heart open wide enough that you are not afraid to give, and with a faith humble enough to know that every good thing you have has its source in me. When you live this way, what I have promised will not only remain with you, but will become a stream carrying life to many others. And that is the deep purpose I placed in you from the very beginning. But my child, there is one thing I need you to grasp with all your heart. Every gift of grace needs a point of contact. Not because I am stingy, nor because I am waiting for you to prove something, but because I honor the place where you stand. I do not put what is holy into a space where you are absent. Therefore you must return, not out of mere habit but with awareness, not because you are afraid of missing out, but because you choose to remain. When you place yourself in the right place, you open up the space to receive what I have prepared. Many people ask and ask, yet never stay long enough. They touch the threshold and then turn away, thinking nothing has happened, while I am standing inside, waiting for them to take one more step. I invite you to make a commitment that is very simple, yet very real. Not a commitment to impress anyone, but a commitment to your own soul that you will return to this place. At this time, with a willing heart, when you choose to switch on your attention, you are telling me that you do not want to miss the rhythm of heaven's work. What I will pour out tomorrow will not be something separate, but will be built upon the foundation that has been laid today. Grace has its order, and restoration does not operate by impulse. If you walk away halfway, you do not lose me, but you may miss the key instructions that would help you hold fast to what is now being opened. Do not think that a single peak moment is enough. I am not building your life on fleeting emotions, but on appointments that are kept. There are things which, if you do not hear them at the right time, you will misinterpret later. There are things which, if you do not receive them in full, you will hold only a portion of the blessing in your hands and not know how to keep it. I am not saying this to make you anxious, but to awaken your alertness, for I am leading you into a new phase where you no longer live by reactions, but by clear and continuous guidance. Therefore, right now, I want you to adjust your posture, not only in your body but in your inner being. Lift up your head, not in pride but in trust. Straighten your shoulders and back, not to appear strong, but to remind yourself that you are no longer pressed down as before. Take a deep breath, not of anxiety, but of the hope that has just been rekindled. Can you sense it? The atmosphere around you has changed. Not noisy, not overwhelming. Yet there is a very real shift. Like when the wind changes direction, and you only notice because the leaves begin to tremble in a new direction. This is not a product of imagination, nor is it a speech of self-comfort. This is an intervention from the heavenly realm, quiet yet precise. I am not awakening you with thunder, I am touching you with certainty. Your season of tears is not denied, but it has completed its assignment. Those tears have softened your heart, washed away layers of hardness, and prepared you for what comes next. And right here, not on some distant day, your season of restoration begins, not with a dizzying leap that leaves you dazed, but with a foundation that enables you to stand firm. The four-dimensional miracle I am releasing is not hanging somewhere in a vague future. It is not a promise meant to lull you to sleep. It is here. It is moving. It is advancing toward you at a pace that only heaven fully understands. When it touches your life, it will not merely fix one area, but realign the whole structure. You will find your body lighter, not because there is no more work to do, but because you no longer carry everything alone. You will find your mind clearer, not because there are no more problems, but because you know what is worth holding and what must be released. You will find your emotions healed, not because the past has vanished, but because it no longer has the right to govern the present. And you will see your faith mature, no longer trembling with circumstances, but standing firm right in the midst of the in-between. Someday, there will come a day when you will hold in your hands evidence that is undeniably real, and you will no longer need anyone to confirm it for you. You will look back on this moment not with suspicion, but with a deep, quiet gratitude. You will remember the day you stopped running, stopped protecting yourself with busyness, and began to listen. You will remember the instant you allowed yourself to receive, not because you were worthy, but because you trusted that I am a merciful Father. And then you will understand I was not late. I was only waiting for you at the right place. You have arrived, and I am still here, even now, while your sight is still veiled by the fog of circumstances. I want you to learn to lean on what does not change in me. There are seasons when you cannot see the whole picture, cannot fully understand the process, cannot fit the scattered pieces of your life into something meaningful. But I have never asked you to see everything before you believe. I only invite you to remember this when I have spoken. That word does not drift aimlessly in the air. nor does it depend on the rise and fall of your emotions or your faith. My word carries within it purpose, direction, and the power to complete what I have begun, no matter where you are on the journey. You often think, my promise is like a fragile seed that needs you to protect it, to preserve it with unending effort. But the truth is, my word is like rain that falls from heaven, soaking into the earth, quietly working in depths your eyes cannot see. When you only look at the surface, still dry and barren, you grow discouraged and wonder if anything is happening at all. I want you to understand that even when the ground is silent, life is still being awakened underneath. My word does not return empty. Because it does not carry mere speech, it carries my own intent. And that intent is never hindered by outward delay. I call you beloved not because you have done well enough, but because you belong to me. My choosing is not based on achievements, nor is it shaken by the times you stumble. When I place my hand upon your life, I do not do so on a whim, but with full understanding of who you are, both light and shadow, both longing and weakness. You were chosen not to carry the pressure of proving your worth, but to live with the assurance that you are not replaceable, not forgotten, not measured against anyone else. At times you think blessing is something you must wait for in a distant future when everything is finally arranged, when you are strong enough, good enough, worthy enough. But I want to realign the way you see. Blessing is not only at the destination, it is moving even within the process. Even on days when you cannot see clear change, blessing is still working in quiet ways, keeping you from what would wound you more deeply, reshaping you away from patterns of thinking that would lead you to exhaustion, and opening your heart to things you never dared to hope for. My blessing is not always loud, but it is always faithful. The restoration I give you is not a brief flash that appears and fades. It is a steady current, step by step, bringing you back to what I shaped from the beginning. There are parts of you so used to brokenness that you have mistaken it for your nature. I come not to deny your past, but to heal it so you no longer carry your wounds as the definition of who you are. When I restore, I do not merely fix what is damaged, I reestablish order, so you can stand firm in what lies ahead without constantly returning to patch the past. You fear there are forces too great, circumstances too complex, limitations too obvious for my promise to become reality. But, my child, there is nothing, and I say this with the certainty of the one who rules over time, there is nothing that can obstruct what I have decreed. What you call obstacles, I call instruments. What you see as delay, I use to drive roots deeper. What you think is disadvantage, I can turn into the foundation for growth you never imagined. When I speak over your life, it is not a momentary encouragement meant only to make you feel better. It is an eternal decree, established not merely on earth, but first above every shifting tide. What is set in heaven is not shaken by changes on earth. You may waver, circumstances may turn, but that decree remains steadfast, working beneath the surface of the reality you are living. And because of that, you do not need to live in fear that everything will collapse if you are weak one more time. I invite you to learn how to rest in what I have spoken. Not rest as surrendering in defeat, but rest as trusting. When you stop trying to control outcomes, your heart will open to receive guidance. When you stop measuring progress by speed, you will recognize the depth that is being formed. You do not need to shout for the promise to happen, nor do you need to keep yourself tense so the future will not slip from your hands. What I have begun, I have both the power and the patience to complete. And there will come a time when, as you look back, you will realize that right now is not only a moment in time, it is a way of living. Right now, you are being kept. Right now, You are being led. Right now, my word is at work, even if you cannot yet name all that is unfolding. When you live with that awareness, you will no longer be haunted by the need to see everything with your natural eyes. You will walk with a deeper peace, knowing your life is not drifting, but held within a plan wrapped in love. Let these words settle within you, not as a slogan to repeat, but as a truth to lean on when you grow weary. I have spoken, and my word is working. I have chosen, and the choosing is not withdrawn. I have blessed, and that blessing does not run dry. I have begun restoration, and that process is not interrupted. You do not need to fear the future, because your future is not slipping into the unknown. It is being guided by me, the one who set his seal upon your life before you could even understand who you were. I want you to remain a little longer in this quiet rhythm, because there are things that open only when you stop rushing to conclusions. When clarity begins to flow into your life, it does not arrive like lightning tearing the sky apart, but like underground water slowly seeping through layers of parched earth. At first, you only feel a softening and easier breath in the middle of heavy days. Then, little by little, you realize you no longer react from old instincts, no longer panic at things that once disoriented you. That is when I am working at the deepest level, where you are no longer driven by confusion, but begin to be led by discernment. There were thoughts that once filled your mind completely, wearing you down because you analyzed endlessly and still arrived nowhere. I do not erase them by force. I quiet them with truth. When my light touches you, what is unnecessary will lose its weight on its own. You will no longer have to strain to choose, because many paths that once appealed to you will suddenly feel unfamiliar, not because they are evil, but because they no longer belong to the season you are entering. This clarity will not make you arrogant. On the contrary, it will make you humbler, because you will understand how often you went off course simply because you did not pause long enough to listen. I know you have lived with the feeling that you must manage everything yourself, as though if you do not control it, everything will fall apart. But, my child, that burden of control is what has drained you. As I restore your direction, I am also teaching you to lay down responsibilities that were never yours to carry. This is not giving up, it is returning what is not yours. There are outcomes I never assigned to you, futures I never required you to draw by yourself. When you stop playing the role of your own savior, there will be room for me to be who I truly am. The restoration I bring does not separate itself from your daily life. It enters the way you wake in the morning, the way you face your work, the way you respond to words that unsettle you. You will realize you are no longer easily pulled into the spiral of comparison, no longer driven to prove your worth through speed or achievement. Instead, you begin to walk with a quiet certainty without display, yet unshakable. That is the mark of restored direction. You know where you are going, even when you cannot yet see the destination clearly. In that process, I also touch your joy, not the loud kind that depends on circumstances, but a deep and steady joy that can remain even on imperfect days. This joy does not make you forget hardship, but it keeps hardship from defining you. When you begin to laugh again, not because everything is finally fine, but because your heart has been set back in the right place, that is when you are being truly healed. That joy will guard you from depletion, from a way of living that merely survives without vitality. And as your heart is renewed, the way you view resources changes as well. You no longer see finances only as a constant worry or a measure of success. You begin to see them as part of a trust I have given you, something to steward with wisdom and peace. I do not pull you into lack, nor do I entice you to chase abundance at any cost. I teach you to live with enough, and from that enough, you learn to share without fear. When your heart is no longer ruled by money, Money also loses the power to keep you awake at night. The healing of your body is not outside this process either. There is a kind of weariness that does not come from illness, but from a life no longer aligned with the rhythm I have set. When you begin to honor your limits, resting without guilt, working without self-destruction, your body will respond with recovery. I do not promise you will never feel tired, but I promise you will no longer live in prolonged exhaustion as if it were normal. Your body is a dwelling place where I abide, and I do not neglect the place where I live. In all of this, I want you to understand that your agreement is not an empty ritual. When you dare to speak what I am doing, you are training your heart to side with truth instead of letting circumstances tell the story for you. Each time you affirm restoration, you are rejecting the old way of thinking that said things will always stay the same. You are not denying reality. You are simply refusing to let the present define the future. That is the maturity of faith, to see what is, yet place your trust in where I am leading. I do not need you to repeat declarations like a mantra. I need you to live gradually into what you confess. When you speak of restored direction, walk faithfully in the small decisions. When you speak of restored joy, allow yourself to smile without guilt. When you speak of restored finances, choose integrity and discipline, even when the results are not yet visible. When you speak of restored health, love your body as part of my design. Words and life, when they walk together, create the space where miracles can unfold. There may come days when the path feels dim again, for this journey is not a straight line. But my child, each time you return to the clarity I have given, you will move faster, steadier. You are no longer the one lost in confusion, not knowing why. You are one who has learned to pause, to listen, to align, and to walk with me. And no matter where you are in this in-between, I am still there, unhurried, unwearied, patiently guiding you through every layer of transformation. In the end, what I desire is not merely that your problems be solved, but that you be renewed from within, so that when everything around you changes, you will not fear, and when nothing changes, you will not despair. You will know where you belong, who walks beside you, and why every step you take carries meaning. That is the life I intend for you, not an easy one, but one of direction, of light, and of my companionship to the very end. I have not finished speaking to you yet, for if we stop too soon, you will leave with comfort but not transformation. I want you to linger a little longer, not to hear words that soothe, but to fully understand what I am doing in the depths of your soul. For if you receive only the relief of emotion but miss the new direction, you will return to the same old cycle where tears keep falling without knowing where they lead. You must understand, I do not merely collect your tears as sacred keepsakes. I use them as a language that speaks into the unseen. Every tear you shed in trust is a silent declaration that you have not surrendered. When you cry and still pray, you are telling heaven and earth that pain does not have the final word. And what you do not see is that in your weakest moment, you are joining a battle you are not fighting alone. I am speaking on your behalf when you have no strength to speak, clearing the way in places your feet have not yet gone. There are processes that cannot happen in laughter, but can only be birthed in silence and tears. If you had never been broken, you would not know what true surrender is. If you had never been helpless, you would still believe you control everything. I do not lead you into suffering to teach endurance, but to teach dependence. And that dependence, once formed, becomes a shelter for the rest of your life, independent of circumstance. Do you see? Once you believed in me for what I could do for you, but now, in this in-between, I am leading you to believe in me for who I am. This is a delicate yet vital shift. Faith, built on outcomes, will always be anxious, because it depends on external things. But faith refined through tears stands firm even when everything around shakes. I am not taking away your hope. I am purifying it from expectations that exhaust you. There are prayers you have offered that I have not answered, not because I have refused, but because I am answering differently. I am slowing your pace so that you will not step into what you are not yet ready for. I am untangling the mixed motives within you, so that when you do receive what you asked for, you will not lose yourself in it. You cannot see this because you only see delay, but I see your future, and I love you too much to hand you something that would still wound you. You once thought that if the pain ended, everything would be fine, but I tell you, some are no longer in pain and yet have never been healed. They move on carrying untouched scars and bleed again in later seasons. I do not want that for you. I want you healed at the root, so that when you step into a new season, you do not carry old fears, old reflexes, and old ways of love that drained you. That is why I am teaching you to stay with me even when you do not understand. Stay when prayers seem to echo back empty. Stay when you no longer have words or feelings to express your faith. Just stay, and I will do the rest. Mature faith is not when you talk much about me, but when you still choose me, though you have nothing left to prove. And that faith will become your inheritance. No one can take it away. There will come a time when you look back on this journey and realize if not for those nights you wept alone, you would not know what my true presence feels like. If not for those moments of emptiness, you would not have learned to let me fill you. If not for the times you thought you had fallen apart, you would not have discovered the quiet strength that carried you each step. Then you will stop asking why, because you will finally see what for. I also want you to understand that what I am doing in you is not only for you. You are being prepared to become a refuge for others. One day, when someone sits before you with tearful eyes and a weary heart, you will not need many words. Your presence, your calm, your listening without judgment, these will speak for themselves. And they will sense that there is a Father who once led you through the dark and is now leading them too. Do not take this lightly. I am not healing you merely so you can breathe easier. I am healing you so that you may become a living testimony of my faithfulness, not through grand stories, but through a steadfast life, unmoved by chaos. When you live that way, you will not need to convince anyone to believe in me. Your life itself will do that. So if your heart still feels heavy now, do not be afraid. Heaviness does not mean hopelessness. Often, it is a sign of transformation. Just as a seed must split before life can emerge, you too are undergoing a necessary breaking. I am very near in this moment, closer than you think, and I will not leave until what I have begun is complete. Keep walking, not hurriedly, not trying to prove anything, just faithfully. I do not love you because you are strong. I love you because you are mine, and that love is enough to carry you through the in-between, enough to turn tears into harvest, and enough to write a story that, when you look back, you will know not a single moment of this journey was wasted. I am still here with you, and I have not yet finished whispering what needs to be spoken into the deepest part of your heart. There are layers of meaning behind the closed doors that only reveal themselves once you have walked far enough from the initial pain. At first, you saw loss, then confusion, then weariness and questions of whether you did something wrong. But I want you to know not every unfulfilled plan is born of your mistake. Sometimes, precisely because you were on the right path. I had to stop you, for if you had continued at that pace and direction, you would have arrived too soon, before your inner life was ready to bear what awaited ahead. I know you once thought that if I truly loved you, I would have made everything gentle, but true love does not always mean ease. There are things that, if I did not intervene, you would walk into out of fear of missing out, fear of falling behind, fear of being seen as a failure. I have seen how those fears could lead you, and I would not allow fear to steer your life. So I stepped in, sometimes by letting things collapse, forcing you to pause and ask who is truly leading your way. What you call perfect timing is often merely the moment when your ambition peaks. But I measure time by another scale. I look at the ripeness of your soul, at your capacity to stand when there are no praises, at how you respond when no one notices. Some doors, if opened too soon, would make you live to protect your success instead of living in freedom. I do not want you to become a slave to what you once prayed for. I want you to enter greater things with open hands, unafraid, unstrained, and free. Do you remember how you once begged me for explanations for clear reasons, logical answers, assurance that you were not imagining things? But I chose silence, not because I lacked answers, but because if I had explained everything, you would have understood only with your mind, not through transformation. Some truths are only understood after you have walked through them, when you look back and realize that if I had not closed that door, you would not stand here now with a softer heart, a deeper faith, and a truer dependence on me. I want you to understand that my protection does not always come in gentle form. Sometimes it arrives as a sudden halt, an unforeseen breakdown, a change that leaves you disoriented. But protection is not always pleasant. It is shielding you from what would quietly drain your spirit over years without you knowing. I have seen the paths where, if you walked them, you would trade your spiritual sensitivity for a sense of stability. I have seen the versions of you in those futures more successful in the eyes of the world, but farther from me in heart, and I chose to keep you for myself. You may not immediately recognize what I have saved you from, because what never happens rarely leaves a strong impression. You remember what was lost, but you do not see the wounds that were prevented. Yet there will come a time when you see more clearly, when you encounter old paths in a different form and realize you no longer crave them as you once did. Then you will understand that the change within you is the clearest evidence that I have been at work. I also want you to know this: I did not close doors so you would live in fear, always worrying about what will be taken next. I closed them so you would learn not to build your identity on things that can disappear. When you no longer cling to a role, a relationship, or an achievement, you will begin to touch what cannot be taken away, who you are in my eyes. And from that foundation, you will step into what is new, not with the desperation of one who begs, but with the peace of one who knows they are loved. What I am preparing for you is not a reward for your endurance. It is the natural outcome of allowing me to lead you. I do not replace things one by one, as though swapping an old object for a new one. I renew the entire structure of your life. The relationships ahead will not demand that you shrink yourself. The work ahead will not require you to trade your soul for progress. The responsibilities ahead will come with sufficient grace. And you will realize what makes them different is not that they are perfect, but that they are placed rightly within the order I have ordained. You may be in a season where everything still feels unclear, where you cannot return to the past, and the future has not yet revealed itself. But this is not a meaningless void. It is the space I use to remake you. In that quiet, I strip away false definitions of success, of worth, of what life is meant to be. I teach you how to listen instead of rushing to react, how to wait without giving up, how to trust without demanding guarantees in advance. I know you once believed that if something was from me, it would never leave. But I want you to understand more deeply. There are things I give you for a season to teach you what you need to learn, and then I put them away when that season ends, not because they were bad, but because you have outgrown them. If you hold on to everything I ever gave you, you will have no room for what is new, and I am always making all things new. I do not repeat, I lead you farther. There will be a day when you stand in a different place. Look back at the doors that once closed. and smile, not because you have forgotten the pain, but because you understand its meaning. You will see clearly that if I had not acted decisively then, you would not have this freedom today, this steadiness, this peace that no longer depends on circumstances, and in that moment, you will no longer call what passed taken from you, but protected for you. I am not in a hurry, and I am not late. I am right on time. What is about to open for you will not require you to compete, to prove yourself, or to barter away what is essential. It will come as a natural continuation of the new person you are becoming, and when you step into it, you will know you did not arrive there by luck, but by my faithful guidance through every door that closed. Remain in this trust a little longer. Do not rush to conclude the story while I am still writing it. Do not call a chapter a failure when I am simply turning the page. I am not finished with you. I am opening the way, my way, in my time, for your fullest good. Now, I open my heart before your presence, laying down every calculation and lifting up these pleas distilled from the deepest place within me. Almighty God, you who see into every hidden corner of my heart, I come before you with empty hands, bringing no merit and no conditions. Teach me to release what I still unconsciously grip, so that the grace you give is not choked by fear. When I am allowed to touch your miracle, let me not turn it into my private possession, but let it flow through me like cool, living water. Correct the quiet bargaining within me, so that my faith is no longer a transaction, but wholehearted surrender. May my life become a space where you act in freedom. Merciful Father, I ask you to heal the deepest place within me, the place where I once believed I had to protect myself, to secure my own safety. Set me free from the fear that giving will leave me lacking. Teach me to trust that you are the source that never runs dry, and that I am only a channel for your life. When you invite me to share what I have received, grant me the simplicity and courage to obey at once without delay, without hesitation. May my heart soften again beneath your gentle, quiet call. Loving Father, I thank you that you do not abandon me to fear and calculation. I thank you that every gift you give carries an invitation into true freedom. Though I have often been slow to understand and quick to close my heart, you remain patient, leading me step by step. I am grateful that you trust me enough to place precious things in my hands, not to keep, but to give. I thank you for the people you have placed in my life, those near, and even those I once forgot. Through them, I am reminded that faith is not a solitary journey. You use even fragile connections to reveal your living presence. I give thanks that I am allowed to take part in that work of love. I offer this prayer in the holy name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, so that together we can build a strong community of faith.
you.